I had a long career starting in 1985 and starting as a natural resources attorney for the Idaho Attorney General's office. So I did a lot of the early work around the Endangered Species Act, listings of salmon. I've also worked briefly for the Idaho Conservation League, and then the last 18 years of my full-time career with the Nature Conservancy. And then I ended it with sort of my part-time gig with leading the Coalition for Land Trusts in Idaho. Oh, and then I've put together a class on the Snake River for the Osher Institute, which is an adult learning institute. And I used to be adjunct teaching environmental policy and law for the Masters of Public Administration program at BSU. I think from sitting where we are today, we have a very different culture around social impacts, around the voice of people. The dam building era really got going fast. So through the first decade of the 1900s, and then particularly in the teens, a lot of dams were built. It's like Arrow Rock on the Boise River upstream of town. I think that was 1915. It was once the tallest dam in the world. And so there was a real kind of go attitude. Part of it was the 1902 Reclamation Act that created the modern U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, really gave a federal role and federal financing to dams, and that really accelerated things. And so what typically would happen was the Bureau of Reclamation would do a report on how you should develop water resources for maximum use of water. And that report would go to Congress. Congress would hold hearings. Congress would make a vote. So if you were a town and you wanted to, assert like, hey, I don't want to move, I don't want to be drowned, or I want the dam over here, you had no sort of science-based, environmental analysis-based process that you could turn to. And of course, the dams were crucial. Idaho wouldn't look like it without those dams, right? So towns were drowned, but many more towns were created. The thing about American Falls, and it's not exactly a drowned town, I'm sure there's plenty, but American Falls flooded a very ecologically important place called the Fort Hall Bottoms. And the Fort Hall Bottoms were part of the Shoshone-Bannock Reservation, the Fort Hall Indian Reservation near Pocatello. And the federal government, quote unquote, negotiated agreements with the Shobans whereby they got compensated for that land. But in those days, the bargaining power between the tribe and the federal government was very unequal. The hydropower becomes a regional economic benefit. Low power makes an economic region more competitive. So Pacific Northwest was able to attract a bunch of very power-hungry industries. It made Idaho more competitive because Idaho Power had a very low cost structure. We would not have the culture we have historically when the state was developing, so it was mining, timber, and agriculture, with ag as the big driver. In terms of the sociology, when you flood a town is a flooded town, right? It doesn't really matter who does it.